Okay, Lauren, thank you so much for being with us. We're so excited to have you. What we love about Lauren is Lauren not only was like so gracious in saying yes to us from the beginning, but also just like connected us with other amazing women who may also feel passionate about this. So thank you for everything you did for our Atlanta launch. Okay, so, and you're the editor-in-chief for Modern Luxury, The Atlantan. I'll just get you to tell us a little bit more about you so we don't get it wrong, because you do a lot.
Yes, so it's a lot. I'm actually the editor-in-chief of two titles in Atlanta, The Atlantan, and then Modern Luxury Interiors Atlanta, and then I oversee a total collective of 10 magazines across a bunch of different markets. So it is a lot, but we have a very good workflow as to how we can get all of that kind of stuff done. I started my career as a fashion editor in New York 15 plus years ago, and then I've kind of evolved into just more general lifestyle.
So I think that you're such a good connector, and maybe that's what we need to call, like females need to call networking, because for some reason the word networking just sounds like you're going to like try to sell somebody something, and that is so not what it is, but it's just building meaningful connections that can help you advance your passion. So tell us how you've been able to do that so well, and it feels like it's so natural for you.
And to you, for our listeners to know that we're muted.
Oh, I unmuted us.
Sorry. Okay. Is that Lauren was talking to me like when we first met the first time, and I mean, I'm 45. I have been an attorney for years, so there really wasn't a whole lot of, I mean, I guess there was some networking, but nothing like when you're building your business or your brand. And you, like the tips that you gave me have been so useful. I mean, so it doesn't have to be just for the young person who's like getting out there. I mean, like this is really applicable for so many different areas of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the old school mindset is networking is like you're in a big conference room, you've got a name tag on, and you're going around shaking people's hands. And that's totally not what it is these days, right? Like it is saying yes to opportunities, even if it's just, a 10-minute phone call or, a coffee or something like that. I know a lot of people don't like to do coffees, and I get why that can become annoying. But my perspective has always been that you never know who you're going to work for or who you're going to work with. So you might as well always continue to talk to people. I think it's hard for Southern women in particular when it should be actually easier for us, because Southern women are like, oh, well, I don't want to put myself on display. I don't want to come off too confident. I don't want to ask for help. When really we're so adept at talking and talking to strangers and making small talk and finding ways to connect. So I think it should actually be a lot easier for Southern women to do that than people often think it is.
So where would you say like the best place to begin would be, like either for the young girl that's just out of college or for the mom like me that's deciding to build a business for the first time? Like where should we start?
So now is kind of a tricky time to do it, but there are definitely ways that it can be done. I get emails all the time from girls in their 20s saying like, my friend of a friend of a friend said you might be open to talking to me. And I always try to. So just put yourself out there. Give yourself a very succinct kind of elevator pitch of who you are and what you want from them. Don't use the word pick your brain. That's like so passe. But, I like to connect with you because I see, a lot of people in XYZ market, or that, a lot of people in XYZ industry, or I'm planning on launching a business. I would love your help because I see that you specialize in whatever it is. I think that it's important that when you, as someone who gets approached all the time, that you clearly outline what it is that you want from someone in a very polite way. Because what can often be frustrating is when someone comes at me and then sucks up all my time and then doesn't really know how to maximize the time with me. So I think, having a focus to what you're asking for is great. I think blind emailing people is totally acceptable. It's even better if you have a connection. I had a girl 2 weeks ago who is friends with a girl that works with me, and she was really timid about approaching me. The intermediary told me, and I said, absolutely, of course I'll take time. Like, of course I want to help her. And, we ended up, I said 15 minutes, and I think we were on the phone for 45. So I think it's really important to have intention. When I was 21, I collected all these business cards from all these people by getting informational interviews, by literally blind emailing people. And this delightful woman, Gina Kelly, who was then the fashion director at 17, she, said, sure, come on in. I'd love to speak with you. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I got this. We had a great conversation. It didn't really go anywhere after that. But I had a job opportunity at 17 magazine, literally 10 years later. And I told her, I said, Gina, you were so kind to me. I mean, I was 21. I had no idea what I was doing. She said, Lauren, that was probably my first week of work. Like her first week on the job. So she didn't know what she was doing either. But it was, the connections always come full circle.
Well, there's a funny story that we have to share. So tomorrow we have this thing called Wealth Edit Wednesday. Anyone that's listening can join. It's our open call. Usually they're closed to our membership, but it's Edwina Dunn. She's from England. I emailed her.
On LinkedIn.
She has LinkedIn. 1 million followers and has done the most amazing thing. She runs this company called The Female Lead. And you never forget the people. This is the opposite side of networking too. Like you never forget the people that bring you to the table. I remember my first client ever in my private wealth management business. You just don't forget. And so we always try to be really conscious when someone's like, hey, can we have a minute of your time? If we can possibly do it, we do, because we know what that feels like. At any age, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think that, I've been burned by bad networking too. Like, let me just pick your brain. And then like they end up taking all of your trade secrets or whatever. But I think if you're approaching someone, you're very kind, cordial, friendly as Southern women are, and you say what the intention is from the outset, then I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that.
And I've also found that like being on the opposite side of it, and I'm sure you felt the same way too, like it is so inspiring to hear what other people are trying to do as well. And like being able to join in that journey with them, there's just something about that like gives me energy in my own practice and what we're doing. So, it kind of goes both ways. And also it's just neat to, a lot of times when you're opening the door to these young people, I know like our intern that we have right now is amazing. And Lauren met her through the mentor program at Georgia. I mean, and like, it's really neat to see those relationships develop and how they can go both ways too.
I will tell you that nearly every single job that I've gotten or that I've needed a reference for goes back to my first job at Cosmopolitan Magazine. Those people have always been there for me and always stuck their neck out for me. So it's good to not only make the connections, but then maintain them.
I think when we talked a few weeks ago, you talked about how like to be strategic when you reach out, like to say, this is what I'm looking for. This is the connection that you and I might have in common. Like, what do you think some of the like good tips are for like sending those emails on the cold call?
For sure. So I would keep it very short. I would keep it like 3 to 4 sentences. I am very new school in applying for jobs ever, like in the last, 10 years. I've always kept my cover letter to that short. Like, I don't think you need more than that much information. Do your research, obviously, so that you know who this person is and that you know what they're about. It used to be very stalkerish to say to people, oh, well, I saw that you were in, Europe last summer on your Instagram because I got that deep. But I think that that's totally fine too. Like, find the connections where you can and how you can. And then be very intentional with, I would like 10 minutes. I would like 15 minutes, not like, do you have 3 hours for lunch? And I'm just going to ask you every question under the sun. I mean, if that ends up happening, that's amazing, but nobody ever sets out for that to happen.
Yeah. And what do you think women do that like are just like, besides pick your brain, what are some other things that it's like, no. And I agree. I mean, I think if someone is willing to prepare, I think if you really want to meet someone, anytime I approach someone, even online, I'm like on Instagram, going into their direct message, I try to like understand what they're about and pre-vet, like, would this be something that they'd be interested in? If it's not, then I don't want to waste their time because, that kind of thing. But what are some other tips?
So I would definitely make sure it's personalized. I do not do well with LinkedIn, with direct messages, any of that kind of stuff, because I've got too many things going on. So when you can, find the email, because that way they can mark it unread, they can come back to it. They can, take their time with it. If you send me a LinkedIn message, chances are I looked at it, while I was doing the dishes and then I'll forget about it for 3 weeks. So I would definitely say that, to do your research, to make sure, this sounds so intuitive, but to make sure to follow up and say thank you. I've had a lot of people not do that, surprisingly, and I'm kind of crazy and I always send a handwritten note. Again, that's very hard to do in 2020. But the number of people who have just been like, okay, bye, and then never, thanked me. I don't need the praise. I just need the recognition that I gave you some time, and that you're happy about it. So.
Yeah. Well, this is switching gears a little bit, but can you tell us, when we talked a few weeks ago, you talked about how dealing with and managing your own personal finances has really been kind of like the fabric of who you are. Can you talk to women about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I come from actually a very strong financial family. My father was an investment banker for my entire life. However, it was always like dad just took care of those things, right? Like I didn't know what a 401k was until I was approached with one. I didn't know what any of that kind of stuff was. So for me, being on my own in New York and being in my 20s, and I think a lot of that came from when I was freelancing too, that mentality of like, I have to get this done. Nobody else is going to do it. I just started to learn things here and there. I think some people are natural learners and some people aren't. Some people who are natural learners also happen to oftentimes be natural connectors. So if you feel that within you, you probably have the ability to do a lot with your own personal finances as well. So I trial by fire. I call my dad when I can, when I think I need to, but for the most part, I try to do it myself because I need to know. I need to know what these things are. You'll love this, Emily, as a former lawyer. Like, we were doing our mortgage and my husband just signed the form and I was like, whoa, wait, and read line by line, and I found errors. So it's just, I think I mentioned this to you both, but it's just being an advocate for yourself, no matter what. I've had to get hundreds of dollars back from insurance companies and like having to go through that myself, and knowing that like that's my money that they mistakenly took out of my account. It's just kind of astonishing to me how some people don't advocate for themselves. So I think it's important to kind of just learn as you go.
You're right. And it's so funny when you say that, because in the South we're like, well, I don't want to be rude or I don't want to do this, but like there is a place for that. Honestly, it's, if it's your money, it's your money. Yeah. If the insurance company has it, like, trust me, they have enough. We can take them off the prayer list.
Yes, I have been we're in month 10. For 10 months, I've been trying to collect $700 from my insurance company, and I call every 2 weeks, and I'm very polite about it, and they know me, but I'm not letting that go. So, my Google Calendar is my best friend. I put in all sorts of reminders constantly. Today was check on insurance. Okay, right, that's on my list of things to do. So a lot of it is trial and error, but for me personally, and again, I have no idea where this comes from, it's the thought of losing money that could have been saved that keeps me kind of, in line with all of those sorts of things.
Okay, so do you find that you and your friends, at the Wealth Edit, we'd really love to advocate for women to talk about their finances. That's the mission of the Wealth Edit, is to get women to start talking about it. Do you find that you and your friends talk about it, or do you think it's still taboo?
No, it's definitely still taboo. We all came, into my college friends, and some of them are listening, but we all came into college together kind of on an even playing field, and then we've all broken off in different directions. And, simple things like baby showers and wedding showers, or girls' trips, like there are definite different attitudes towards money. And I have, for better or for worse, I will be the one that says, I can't afford it this time, or can we maybe look into other options, or I found, something nearby that's just a little bit cheaper. So I always try to, sometimes to the point of annoyance, be the one that's making sure that everyone is aware of other options. I'm just a researcher, and I like to be that person. The girls that work with me are significantly younger. I always make sure that they know exactly how much I make. Because I think it's important to share salaries and stuff like that. circus here today. I think it's important to share salaries and stuff like that. To know, like, well, wait a second, you're making more than me and we have the same title. So like, what happened there? And even if there's nothing you can do about it this time, to just know better for yourself the next time. I say that, but I still am a classic bad negotiator when it comes to salaries and stuff like that. But, you know, I just think it's the conversation of money, whether it's I can't afford this, I can't afford that, or this is how much I make, this is how much I want to make, are really important to have because people still don't have those.
I agree. And, you know, saying I can't afford it, those are like brave words. And to be honest, a lot of people think that like you can't afford it and there's so much social pressure and like, okay, you missed one girls trip. All right, you'll be buying drinks later in life. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people that act like they can afford things they can't. This becomes particularly important, I feel, with children to kind of integrate them into the conversation. If people are like, how do I talk to my kids about money? Well, just be realistic with them. Like when we go to Target, they don't need a new toy every time. Like just saying like, we don't spend our money that way, or like, we can't afford it. That's okay. I mean, this year in my family, my daughter, she wanted to do competition dance. It's so expensive. Well, we can't do dance and horseback riding. We just can't. Even if we could, it's just bad stewardship. You know what I mean? So like just telling her like, hey, we can't afford to do both. I need you to pick. And then she did. And it was no big deal for kids to do that. And I don't know, I just find that to be, I'm really encouraged with you saying that, because I think more people just need to be like, hey, I can't do that right now. And that's okay. That is totally fine.
Yeah. I think my, one of the like themes of my life is that you always have a choice. Right? There are always choices. And it's whether or not you want to accept the fact that it might be two choices you're not thrilled about, but you always have a choice. So, and you know, the likelihood of your daughter seeing both of those through anyways, you know, into her teens is slim. So I think that I have my first child on the way, and I hope to raise her to be very much aware of how much things cost, not to make her feel guilty, but just for her to know that money has value and that, you know, things are valued differently.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that you do, and maybe I don't even know if you realize this, but there's so many women, and men too. I mean, it's not just women, but that like really don't know if they can afford it or not. Mm-hmm. And part of it is that practice of knowing, like, where are my finances? Like, what can I afford? What can I not? You know, and that's something that we really push at the Wealth Ed is like sometimes just awareness. What is your budget? How much are you spending? And you know, sometimes the answer is actually you can afford that, even though you're like, your gut is like, you know, but you know, so it kind of works both ways. But it's so fascinating to hear different people's takes on it, because like with my girls, I say it all the time, but a lot of times it's just because I've sat there and done the budget. And it's so much easier to say, you know what, that's not in the budget right now, when you actually know your budget, because it's very easy to stick your head in the sand when it comes to spending.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this, oh, go ahead, sorry.
So I was just going to say, this is bad finance etiquette, but like, I don't even have like an actual budget, which of course I'll have to do once this baby comes. But like, my philosophy has always been, I'm really bad at saving. So let's just find ways where I can make money. And I use things like Digit, where I just looked in that yesterday, and it's, you know, taking small amounts out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. I mean, it's my money, but it's just being set aside. So it's those sorts of little mental tricks to make me feel like I have maybe more money than I do. And then I can be like, oh, great. Yeah, of course we can go to dinner. I forgot I had all this money in my back pocket.
That's a great point, because budgeting does not have to look like you have a spreadsheet and you're monitoring how much you spend on your hair care every month. Like, I would never be able to live like that. I always say, like, I have a bucket. I know I put how much I think we can spend that month in that bucket. And when it gets low,
it's just
then we pull back. You know, I mean, like that, but that's what works for me, and we're advisors. I mean, but I always say, I'm like, I'm not looking to see how much I spend on my hair every month.
No.
Because sometimes it's different, like, who knows, but that is a great point, because either way, you're making it work. You're being creative with it. I always love you have some great ideas for side hustles and stuff, and like, you're getting in there and making it happen. I love it.
Yes. Well, okay, so this is something that wasn't on our pre-call sheet, but I want to ask you, because from every conversation I've had with you, Lauren, it sounds like networking or mentorship is a big part of like who you are as a person. It sounds like you proactively mentor other women in your office, and that is amazing. And so was that a big thing for you? So did you have really excellent mentors, or kind of tell us how you think about mentoring? Because I think those vertical relationships are so important. It doesn't matter if you're working inside the home or outside the home, but just kind of connecting with women who have been there before.
Yeah, so a lot of it is that I learn a lot through teaching as well. But after my internship in New York, they never really explained to me why I was doing something. It was just go do it. So when I became the assistant and I had, 10, 15 interns to look after, I always made sure to tell them why. And then you could like literally see the light bulb go off and be like, okay, I have responsibility, like, and this is the end product and I'm going to be part of that, even if it's just this tiniest little thing. So that's always been really important to me to make sure that people know why they're doing things. And I love explaining that. I had my former coworker was the same way as me, like her with a little flock of interns. And she would love to go in there and explain things to them because she really did want them to be better, to understand, to have a good impression, not only of her, but of the company. And to see that come back to her with, interns who, heck, might be at the next company she wants to work for, like those sorts of things. Like you truly never know. And there have been, gosh, I've probably mentored hundreds of interns over the years, but there were girls back when the age difference between me and them was, 3-4 years, like where they'd pop up again. And I'd be like, hey, I'm freelancing. I see you're working at this company. I would love to reconnect. And so it all just kind of comes back. I think that people don't, a lot of time, especially in New York and magazine world, but like people don't have time to show you. But I think that if someone stops and takes a second and does show you those sorts of things, it can be monumental. I mean, it put me on a career trajectory to have some of these women that did mentor me in their own different kind of old school magazine way, to really have them stick their neck out for me still now. So, the boss I worked for 15 years ago, like I still talk to her.
Okay, so tell me about that, because clearly you made an impression on these women. And now that we're in leadership roles, I feel the same thing. Like you can see the people that are just willing to bust it, and I appreciate that because there's so much going on. And you just, I think about when I was in my 20s, how little of like a view I had into like how a company actually worked, but then it felt very big, and that's how it's supposed to go, right? But like, how would you say, because it seems like you have incredible work ethic too, like what, but then you hear a lot of people saying like, create boundaries and do this. Tell us how you balance all of that.
I have pretty bad boundaries, I will say. I, especially now, it's like, 9:00 at night, I have nothing else to do. I guess I should just go, write. But I think that it's important to be a yes person. And that doesn't mean that it has to be like yes to death. If something's wrong, definitely speak up. But it's important to be a yes person and to really be able to read people. So we have interns come in, and this is not necessarily at Modern Luxury, but over the years, interns come in who they cannot read the situation, who are just, stick themselves into it, whether it's like, how can I help you? Or like, or are sulking off in a corner. Either way, I think being an intuitive people reader is like a huge part of it. And then being a quick learner, but you can only learn so much, right? You really need someone else who's going to be there to also teach you and to help you learn from mistakes. So my old coworker, who I mentioned, would sit down with them with the copy and say like, look, this is where you should have said this, or you should have consulted this handbook or whatever. And like very gently giving them feedback. I think as interns, especially, you don't get a lot of feedback. It's just like, never mind, I'll redo it. So I think if you can find a few minutes in your day to do that for people like that, it really does come back to you. This is a wild story. So my former boss, her nanny, I had quit and I was freelancing, and her nanny had to have surgery. And I was available. So I babysat our kids for 2 weeks. And so when a freelance opportunity came up for like a 6-month position at the magazine, even though I was significantly less experienced than some of the other people, guess who got the job?
You deserved it, I'm sure.
I mean, she knew she could trust me. I mean, I just watched her kids for 2 weeks. Like, she knew she could trust me.
No, I think that's such a great word for everybody to hear, because like my whole life, I mean, it's just like you just say yes. I mean, like a lot of times I just say yes. And like if you were to look at my professional and personal life, like the different doors that opened as a result of just simply saying yes to something that didn't make any, I mean, not like you said, like babysitting or whatever it was. I mean, and it's just creating relationships. It's figuring out ways to get people to trust you, to like realize, hey, she's trustworthy. She's going to work hard. She's going to do what we ask her to do. And really, you know, I've heard this said so many times, it's like your IQ gets you through the first, 23 years of your life, and then the rest of your life is your EQ. Mm-hmm. So like that just emotional intelligence of how to read the room, how to figure out when to lean in, when to back off. It is so very important. But to your point, people can learn that. Sometimes people have not had anybody invest in them. I feel like my mother has whispered in my ear my entire life, like, hey, you need to back up. I mean, like I just had that growing up, but a lot of people don't have that. And I love hearing you say that. And it just, I'm going to be better as a result of you saying that, about leaning in with some people and saying, hey, I don't, you're a really hard worker, but like, pointing it out very gently, respectfully, but that could change their career as well.
It really could.
Thank you for saying that. I needed to hear that.
An intern who I could tell was not feeling it, and I sat her down and I said, look, I can tell this is not for you. So what do you want? Into the conversation, I convinced her to go to law school, which is where she belonged. So, it would, I just like having those kind of real conversations with people, again, because the more authentic you are with people, the more you can connect with them, the deeper you can connect with them, the longer you can connect with them. And that's super important.
Okay, one last question. And so we've asked everyone this today, but we are launching in Atlanta today, and it was so generous of you to say yes with your time. I mean, why did you choose to, I know you're a yes person, but why did you choose to say yes this time for the Wealth Edit?
Well, I really believe in what you guys are doing. Like I said, like I've kind of had to learn, even though my dad is like a financial heavy hitter, I've had to learn this kind of stuff through the back alley. And I think that it's important to talk about money. I think many people I know do not. And so if there is a community of people here that can understand maybe what I'm going through, whether it's, financial questions or successes or anything like that, I think that is something that's really unique. I do want to point out that Elizabeth on one side of me and Michelle on the other side of me, I do know them both from heavy networking. So it was exciting to see you guys bring them in as well too, because I think that it's like, okay, like you get it, you get the Atlanta thing, we're all kind of in the same sphere of like-mindedness, and it's, you guys have done a really good job of curating what you're doing and to who you're doing it for.
Well,
Thank you so much.
It would not be the same without women like you. And Thank you for being here from the beginning. And it really is. The launch is the beginning. We are hoping to create this community in Atlanta. It's just so fun to do it. We've seen what it can happen when it happens. And so thank you for being part of that. We really appreciate you so much and your time.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye.